Hello, divine beings. It's Saint M3F Day, they, them pronouns. Welcome to another The Other Side podcast. And today we're going to be talking about grief, the beauty of grief. But before we begin, I'm going to open up this space and I invite you to get settled into your bodies, taking a couple of deep breaths from the diaphragm out, with an audible sigh outwards as you release the energies. I open up this space, setting the intention that I am a clear, pure channel of the highest light, love, truth, and wisdom for the collective today. That as you hear me and exist in energetic space with me, you may receive the clarity and guidance and vibrational support that you need in your current life, and as you move towards the embodiment of your highest self and potential, so that you may live your best life. I am channeling pure source energy, so if you choose to receive, simply say yes in your heart. You may be at choice and are at choice, so you can say no at any time and yes at any time to change, so that you are in your energetic sovereignty. Thank you, spiritual team, for helping me remain in my energetic sovereignty and integrity as I serve to channel today. Ise. Udodi. Peace prevails. And I start with that. This is an Igbo phrase that my bloodline ancestors often said as a reminder of the higher truth that whenever there is chaos or endings, death or grief, things always move towards harmony. Everything seeks to come back to its harmonious state. Within us, we call it homeostasis. It is peace, a state of right balance and harmony. And so, the beauty of grief, this came to me because currently the energies of death and ending have been around and are going to be coming up even for the collective as we transition as a society, but also vibrationally, frequentially, to the fifth dimension, in density, rather. And so grief is a neutral energy, but in the West it's often hidden. There can be a lot of shame around the grieving process because it ain't pretty. Grief breaks us open, shows us how much we love and have love, reveals to us that space of letting go. Grief does that. And sometimes our spiritual team and higher selves, the universe, orchestrate events for us because our hearts are ready to be cracked open and expanded. Sometimes souls decide to leave because it's their time to go from this earth plane. Sometimes souls go before their time due to no fault of their own. Regardless of how the loss occurs, grief can bring a sense of loss so deep that the fissures and places and spaces of the subtle energy bodies can now open. With grief, there's a need to let go and release. And so this is the opportunity it brings. For as we become open to the letting go, so too is the opportunity to release other energies and frequencies no longer aligned to one's being. It is that opening that is the key to the growth. And so with grief, we are often able to purge emotional energies that have been held inside the emotional subtle energy body unknowingly for years. Not even just our emotion subtle body. We have 7 subtle energy bodies by the Vedic system. But within all of our lower subtle bodies, so you have the physical subtle energy bodies, the emotional energy body, the mental energy body, and then the astral, associated with the root, the sacral, the solar, and the heart chakras. And so grief can allow this purging process in these energy bodies that have been held there unknowingly for years, because now they have the time and the space and the permission to be felt. Grief is that permission to feel pain, the heartache, the loss. And grief can be cleansing because of that, bringing us back to the heart. For we don't grieve what has not been loved, or has love, or is loved. And that is a beautiful thing. For to be rooted in love is to be alive, to have it shift, this love, shift in forms that it takes in our lives, forms that make up the people, places, and beings and objects around us, is the nature of divine, of source. As unconditional, undifferentiated love is a core vibration of source, the infinite creator, God, Allah, whatever you want to call it, universe. My biggest heart expansions and openings came at the immense pain of heartbreak due to love lost and the grief that took its space. Grief asks us to not resist it, but to move through it, to move with it as it carries us from endings to new beginnings. So while there, yes, is pain, there's also the possibility of heart expansion, because as the heart seemingly breaks, the spaces can now be filled with light that it takes. And so emotional pain can serve as this vibrational workout that builds our muscles' capacity to experience and perceive the true nature of divine love. It prepares our higher heart to hold the energies of our higher self in human form, as divine love is a higher vibrational energy that pushes outward so that we can give and receive even more love. To hold that frequency. Grief and death are companions, working in sync. And as with death, there is an ending, there is always a new beginning if we let it. And on the trauma space, in the therapy space, they talk about productive grief and non-productive grief. Productive grief is grief that allows us to feel and experience the hurt, the pain, the loss, and move forward. And non-productive is grief that lasts seemingly for years and doesn't let go. So if we hold on to what was lost, those energies take up space, and thus the new cannot come in. And those feelings of death stay. Loss can stay. And so there is the need to let go with grace. the Aboriginal peoples, indigenous peoples of native indigenous peoples of Australia have a very unique way of approaching death as they understand the nature of the true reality. When a person dies, when a person transitions from the physical realm to the astral realms of energy, because we never really die, we merely are just transitioning between different states of being and existence. When this happens, they bury them and they do not grieve. Because the Aboriginals know that when a loved one shifts from one state of existence to another, there is truly not a loss, but an acknowledgement of this shift and being able to relate to them. So now the relationship is no longer a physical, three-dimensional relationship. It is a relationship of energy. And this is part of the work that people like mediums do. I am a medium. I can communicate with energies that have passed over or in the astral realm. I'm a channel. I'm many things. And so when a loved one transitions from this state of existence to another, you can always connect with them. The beauty of grief gives us space and openings for new beginnings. When I was in Chicago, I was entering my Uber and there was a woman in front and we ended up chatting it up. And I really don't know how we got on this topic, but people often tell me things that are very intimate and vulnerable. Because they feel that the frequency of safetyness, that energy of feeling safe, and so they open up. And so she was telling me how she lost her mother, and she cried. She was on the floor crying and crying and crying for days. She allowed the grief to take her. She leaned into the grief and the feeling of grief. And she said she was just on the floor crying for days and days and days and days. And eventually, it was as if all of a sudden she stopped crying. She said she picked herself up, packed up her things, and left the city she was in and never looked back. And I sat there in the back of the car, the Uber, and it's like listening. I was like, okay, just holding space for that share. And what was being revealed to me at that time was that the death of her mother was a catalyst for this new chapter that had been opened up for her. And so the grief that she had allowed herself to lean into and to feel fully was offering as if a wave of energy was offering that opportunity to flow into this new chapter. And it required that she let go of all of that she knew in the past. So she wasn't only grieving her mother, she was grieving a huge ending of a chapter that she didn't know energetically was occurring. And so grief allowed that to occur because she allowed herself to feel and be with grief. No judgment. Just to be and to experience what that energy consciousness. The ways in which that energy consciousness wanted to move through her. There's a tarot reader and channeler on YouTube, TikTok, who talks about losing their child. They gave birth to a child that had decided to stay in the world for only a couple of hours, and how it was one of the most transformative and beautiful moments of their life because it cracked their heart open to be able to experience a love so deep, to be able to experience love and then offer that through their readings. So they hold the vibration of love in their readings. And how she's so appreciative for not only her child and the experience of being able to have that child in her life for the time that she was able to, and for the experience of losing that child, because it taught them a love so deep, and to have lost showed them that beauty of life, of core source energy. At the root of everything is love and light and wisdom. And power. Everything is made up of light and love, at the very least. That's actually a core part of our universe, y'all. 13th, 14th, 15th dimensions, which are pure source energies that create our 1st through 12th dimension experience in this. It's wisdom, love, power, all rooted in light. So everything has these three. We're talking about grief, though. I saw, what is this? 157, I believe. 1 symbolizing new beginnings. 5 is change. 7 spiritual. So it's major new beginnings through a spiritual change. 5 is this energy of transformation. It's also the energy of creation and joy. So this new beginning, this change, this transformation is offering a spiritual beginning of experiencing creativity and joy in a new way. It might not seem that way, but that is the energy. Sometimes it takes us walking through the loss and moving in life that we can then look back and be like, I see why I went through that. That makes sense. I'm grateful for that experience, for that loss. I share with y'all in my own life. My grandma passed. She transitioned a week before I was born. And that was a huge grieving moment for my birth mother. But the reason she did so was so she could be a guardian angel for myself. And so my birth grandma, my maternal grandma, is a guardian angel. She is literally the maternal lead for my bloodline ancestors. Like, she holds it down, y'all. She's there. She's there. She got my back. She's my or my guardian angel. So I offer this to y'all, that if you have lost a loved one, to connect with them. They're always there. My stomach is rumbling as confirmation. They are always around and they are always there. You merely need to connect with your heart space and ask them to reveal themselves to you. Sometimes there is a transition period though, because when you transition to the astral realm, there's a whole thing that occurs where you might need to purify your energy bodies and yada yada. And so, but be open in your heart with them, for them to connect. Ask to connect with them. Be open to the signs, and they will be there. They will show up and connect with you. Simply got to be open and to ask. So moving back to grief overall, because we don't only grieve people, we can grieve situations, we can grieve identities, we can grieve places and spaces and objects and a whole bunch of stuff. Y'all, we can grieve anything. But with grief, in the beauty of grief, comes an opportunity to allow ourselves to feel deeply and to be moved forward in energy, in love, in opening, and opportunity and possibility. It's not to say that when you lose or when you have experienced a loss, a perceived loss, right? Because we never lose anything. We're always connected in some way or another. That one must move forward right away, It's not saying you must get over it. But it is saying that the experience and allowing ourselves to experience the grief gives us the opportunity to move forward. If you don't allow yourself to experience grief, it's akin to, like in football, a running back is coming towards you, right? And you're locking heads, and they're pushing, and you're pushing, and you're trying to, and you cause that resistance and tension. But the moment you surrender to that force that's coming towards you, the moment you can then move with the energy, and you no longer have a resistance, and they're no longer in opposition, and you're able to be carried forward by the running back. I don't know why I used the football analogy, but sports is coming through right now. I don't even watch football. That's not even my thing. Rugby is more my thing because I played that in undergrad, but it operates a little differently. Okay, so that is all to say. What you resist persists, and so if you resist and you do not allow yourself to fully experience the energy consciousness of grief, you create resistance within, which can then create other, manifest its way in other things, right? We live in a society where grief and grieving is not honored in the way it should be, y'all. In many ancient cultures, indigenous cultures, and in the Igbo culture, and many West African and African traditional cultures, grieving, we had people who were grievers, who their role was to grieve for the loss of the community. And what they were doing was taking on that energy and frequency within themselves of loss and expressing it. And so they were a physical representation of the grief, of the loss, of the death. And they would hold that space within their being and express it. And it was perfectly okay to have a person screaming and yelling and beating their chest and beating the ground and being disheveled and all of it in public as a way to honor the loss. But now in the West, the grief is hidden behind the doors. It is covered up and ignored. because of this idea of the toxic idea of strength and what it means to be strong. To allow oneself to surrender to grief is one of the strongest things one can do. To allow oneself to feel deeply, to be broken open, is one of the strongest things you can do. Because it is only in feeling and allowing ourselves to feel deeply that we can feel alive in our beings. And so the beauty of grief is that it helps us feel more alive. To experience that. Yes, I am here. I am in the body, incarnated into this vessel. And I have loved, and I have lost. Perceived, but yes, that experience of it is still real and valid. So allow yourself to unfold into your grief, to commune with it, to allow it to express through you in a way that helps you come into the fullness of your humanity and the fullness of your heart. Preferably in ways that are healthier and healthy and supportive to your being. Let's say it's ways that are more supportive, right? We can express our grief through movement, through art, through tears, through so many ways. And you can express your grief in ways that are not as supportive, through substances, through self-harm, etc., etc. So if you're experiencing loss, literally sit and ask grief, I am open to experiencing you in ways that are supportive to my growth, that are supportive to the love, that honor the love that I have inside. Carry me forward and allow it to. Surrender. Allow yourself to surrender and let go. And for it to reveal the space within you. Grief does that. It is a conscious energy. And so with that, I end us here. Closing off this channel. I want to call in the natural energy consciousnesses of unconditional love, unconditional self-compassion, and acceptance. Take care deeply. I love you. And may you go in peace.